Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today we're diving into transparency and alignment in your business. My special guest today is the co-founder and CEO of JobSight, Lindsay Bunker. JobSight is a contractor-built restoration software platform. She brings 10 years of experience in the field and the restoration industry to the tech space. She leads JobSight's mission to streamline job management and boost team visibility nationwide. So without further ado, please welcome Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Kayla. You're awesome. We're so excited to be on this podcast with you and love all the podcasts you've done historically. We're excited to share just kind of our knowledge, our why, and our reasons why we do what we do.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I think this is long overdue. I'm so excited to have you on and kind of talk about like your unique position in the space and how it's helped you guys thrive and what led to creating JobSite. I think that most people in our space, we all wear pretty unique hats, but you've kind of crossed over to the other side, if you will. And so with you being on both sides, both in the field and now leading your own tech company, how has your view of the numbers, quote unquote, right? We always say the numbers, evolved, and what metrics really matter in today's restoration business?
Yeah, so it's been interesting because in that shift from being in the restoration business and seeing that there was just such a need for some simplicity out there in order to actually get good data, get good numbers. Everything happens in the field from our team, right? And so the quicker, more easier that we can get that stuff funneled back to us and then do something with it, the better, right? And that required simplicity. So that's kind of where it came from, where it was built. It was built from the techs up, essentially. So my field crew, it was built right there because that's the most important wheels that happen in a restoration business. And so that's where we started. We started there and then we kind of built it up. And then the part of JobSite that is my favorite thing that I, just kind of get giddy and geek out on is the accounting side of it, because that's my background. So about 10 years in the restoration industry as an accountant for our co-founder of JobSite, Jerry Pinnock, his restoration business. I was his accountant for about 10 years, and there was a huge need to bridge that gap between the admin and all the things that happen within a restoration job. I mean, it's the most complex process of any kind of construction or any kind of service industry situation. It's so complex. And so there was so much happening on the admin side in the office. But yet everything just kind of stopped when it came to numbers and accounting. So once we built it up to that admin spot where we're like, okay, we're good, then it was like, oh man, we gotta feed this into the accounting side. We gotta bridge that gap over into the numbers. So as far as what numbers really matter, how that's changed from moving from an individual restoration company to seeing more and being a part of more restoration companies' success is it's actually, I honestly, it's been surprising because I thought that those numbers would get more complex the more I knew of other restoration companies, but it did the opposite. It actually, I had to kind of simplify it down even more, which gave us more clarity and more, it felt easier to tackle something. So one of the things I have written on my windows here, we write all this crazy stuff in our office, but if something seems too hard, I'm reading it right now, too hard to do, it just means that the first step is not small enough. So that's what we run into with so many of these restoration companies now that we're in the tech space and dealing with what we were essentially on all different levels. So we've broken down the numbers to make them a lot more simplistic so that they can actually take action on them. When they get that number overload, they don't know what to do with them. Are the numbers even accurate? That's hard, right? So for people that don't know where to start, that's probably where I like to start, is the simplistic side. You want to know the number of jobs lost and converted, and where they're coming from. That's like the biggest core thing because that's what's bringing our business in. Number 2 is average job size. If I want to figure out or forecast or make a tweak in my process, the only way that I'm going to see if that's going to be beneficial is if I know what my current average job size is. Then I can run those numbers and forecast on it. And again, we're keeping this very simple. So then from there, one thing I want to know, the last thing I want to know is my margins. But the biggest mistake that people are making is they're viewing margins on as a whole. So either as a whole. So if you're full service, you got to break it down, mitigation, reconstruction, right? Those are going to be, you're going to have some things that are hiding in there if you're mushing together those numbers and those margins. And then the next layer of that is I like people to view margins on an individual job basis. Again, when we mush a bunch of numbers together, we're going to miss out on some indicators that could be happening or going on, and we didn't really tackle them because they're being camouflaged by an average. So, but if you're looking at those individual job numbers, you're doing great. And then the next part of that is making sure that you're getting those fast. Get those numbers when you can still take action on it. I could go on and on and on, but my story that I always tell is when I was in the accounting role and estimators would sit in the office and be going over their numbers. I'm pulling a P&L from QuickBooks. I'm making sure that everything's posted. It takes me 2 weeks to get those numbers because I have to run payroll in order to get them to post to the job costing. And so it's a delay. So I'm sitting there telling an estimator, hey, man, you tanked this job. And they're like, oh, shoot, really? I didn't know. I'm like, well, I can't really blame you because you didn't. I didn't have these numbers for you until now. So we have to have that speed and the transparency for them to see exactly where they are on their jobs when they can actually take action on it. So when we bridged that gap, that's what we did. We started chipping away at all these things. We're like, okay, they've got to be able to see labor real time. They've got to be able to see how much that technician is costing the second they clock out. And then we take it a step further and we're like, hey, that tech isn't only costing us $17 an hour. That tech is costing us $17 an hour plus the burden. So we allow you to put that overall burden in. So we have done everything we can. And that's our biggest goal, is making sure that the ease of use to get that transparency to the area of the job and the people that can actually make a difference. That's how we're doing it. And it's been a whirlwind. It's been so fun. But like I said, you can get me started and I won't stop talking when we talk about this kind of stuff and where it came from.
Well, that's why we have you on, right? Because it's exciting to you. And to some people, it's really intimidating because they don't really understand it, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with not understanding it. That's why we have industry professionals like yourself to help break down what these numbers mean or what you should be looking at, right? And I think you used the word transparency in your answer a little bit there. And I think transparency is like a very vague word, but also it could be like a buzzword that people use, right? Because transparency is key in every walk of life, but especially when we're talking about business. And I think that sometimes people don't know where they should be drawing the line on transparency or what should they be sharing, right? Like, can you share too much? Yes, you can share too much. Well, how do you not share too much? So, how should teams see their performance data and only see it, right? Because there's a lot of layers, like you just mentioned, right? There's the cost and there's time. And everything else in between. But do you believe in full financial visibility, like sharing your P&L with your team? And I think really it's not a one size fit all, right? Because every company is different. So what transparency means to you might not mean the same thing to me. So in short, where do you draw the line as a business owner? And, you've sat in that role in the accounting and there's some things you should share and shouldn't share. So what do you think is like the fine line in that sand, if you will?
I love that question. So my experience in walking into this industry, so Jerry Pinnock, co-founder of JobSight, he was the owner of the restoration business. I walked in, sat in on the first like Tuesday meeting where it was estimators, project managers, office admin, it was a weekly meeting that we had. And they pull up on the screen and there's the P&L. And I'm like, wait, what? What are you doing, Jerry? And so he's got his full P&L sitting on the screen. And I'm like, in my head, I'm going, oh my gosh, this can't be happening. Like, is this for real? Like, how can they maintain a culture of not like making people feel like, oh, I should be getting more, or if that's what he's making. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was the way that those numbers are communicated. It was purpose driven. So his purpose was to you bring everybody together as a team, right? So he wanted everybody to know that they played their part in getting that bottom line and getting everything better. And if they have that and they feel like they're a part of that, leaps and bounds. Like it's amazing. Oh, hi, Kitty. So that was a huge like culture shock to me. But then just seeing the P&L on the screen, number one, was a huge culture shock. But then to see what it actually was doing for him, I was like, holy crap, Jerry, you're a freaking genius, right? So but I will say one thing, that doesn't come overnight. It's not, I wouldn't say, hey, go ahead and put your P&L up on the screen. You guys it'll be great for you. Don't do that. Like, we don't want you to do that. We have to start small, right? If you're not currently transparent with things and you're a little hesitant, little shaky, start small. Start with something that doesn't feel so scary. So I tell restoration owners when I meet with them or help them if they're running into things, I love talking to them and getting kind of the temperature on in so many different ways in the industry. But one of the things, an area that I tell people to start is I want them to, okay, let's talk about some numbers that aren't like the numbers, right? So let's talk about Google reviews. Those are super important for this restoration industry. So that is one needle that you can try to move and do it through transparency. So that's where it comes into the purpose-driven transparency. So you can do it in 5 steps. So the goal, I want to increase my Google review rating. So I tell people start there and work backwards. What's the goal? You want to increase that rating. So what's the step? Who can move this needle? Who can help me do that? So you answer that question: techs, estimators, project managers. Who's responsible for initiating that survey? Who's responsible for making that survey a good survey, right? And then number 3, what do they need to see? So what does my team need to see in order to know how to move that needle and if they move that needle? And then the next step is empower them. So they know where you guys currently sit. Now let's empower your team to like come up with ideas. That's probably the biggest, most important part of transparency, I believe, is empowering your team in order to like come up with something, make them accountable for it. If I come up with an idea and share it with Jerry, then he's going to say, okay, great, go ahead, give it a try. Let's see how it works. So now I'm like, oh, wait, really? For reals? I can do that? And so now I'm going to be so much more motivated because it was my idea. I came up with it. And then the last most important piece, well, the second most important piece, follow through. You have to cue that accountability in and connect them to the outcome so that they know exactly, okay, this was our goal. This was the outcome. Here we are. And if they feel connected to that outcome, you are off to the races. So that's a nice place to start. It doesn't feel too scary for a lot of restoration owners. I feel like transparency doesn't have to be this radical openness. It's just about building that trust and aligning and accountability and making people take ownership in your company's goals.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, this is no different than building something else out in your business as well, right? But I also think when you involve your team and you give them motivation, it makes the transparency that much easier for you and what you're going to start to show, right? And I think
Yes.
to your point, starting with like Google reviews is huge, right? Because that's something that also helps build company culture. So it's not just building your transparency, it's actually building the environment, for your team, and it helps them thrive. It helps you thrive. And so I think that a lot of this does more than one thing. It's not just about transparency. It's about involving your team, building a culture, hearing their thoughts and methods in their mind because they provide a different perspective, which is really interesting. And I think it allows you to build up to the bigger things. And by that point, they're going to be able to ask questions about maybe your P&L at that point because they've had a little bit of time to really let it all soak in, but
Yep.
also understand like, hey, P&L also drives our initiatives, right? And so if they understand that, then they can make better decisions. They also may work harder. I know that's crazy, but some people do that. A lot of people are driven by motivation and incentive. So if you're able to kind of pair those types of things together, it just kind of makes it a little bit easier down the line. And it's not so like sticker shock, if you will, or like, oh my gosh, we're doing really bad. It lets them understand how everything affects the bottom and top, line of your
Yes,
business, which is so
absolutely.
crucial, right?
So crucial. Yeah, I love that.
And, I think for you too, because you've worn multiple hats, if you will, this has helped JobSite become what it is today, right? I know you guys have a great team, but particularly for you, I think this helps like emphasize your operational clarity vision, if you will. And with that being said, I think many people know about your guys' platform, but how does it help our industry's teams become more transparent and aligned, especially when we have teams in the field, in the office, maybe even on the road? How does that help with the just transparency and communication? Because I know things can get lost in translation, especially sometimes when our teams are spread really thin.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a great point, and that goes back to how we built it. We built it from our field crews up. So we know that restoration is so heavily weighted on what happens in the field. It's not like our office in here that's like I can control and have visibility on everything that's happening. In restoration, you don't have that benefit. That's a huge benefit. So we have to make it feel as though it is transparent by providing something. Number one, it has to be easy for that technician. They have so much going on throughout their day. They need to know, we need to help guide them through their day. We need to make, even if it's just eliminating one or two clicks, that can be huge, right? Because when they're going through and monitoring a bunch of jobs, if they can eliminate 2 clicks per room that they're monitoring, we're doing a good job. We're making that quicker. We're making that easier. So with starting there, what that did is it created purpose for us. It created purpose for when it got down to onboarding teams and onboarding technicians. It was an easy transition for them. It felt very purpose driven in this industry, right? Because that's where it was built. We know exactly the pain points of technicians. We've lived there. We've seen it. We've been in it. We've been ingrained in it. And so it is a constant moving target. We didn't build something to say, okay, we're done. Here's the text. We actually, every time somebody is onboarded on my team here at JobSite, they go out with a restoration business and they go out with a mitigation crew. They go work inside a restoration business office because I want them to know what that experience is like from a crew standpoint, from a field standpoint, in the industry. And so we will never lose that. That's one thing that has been a driving force, is making sure that we always maintain that. So that operational clarity starts with simplicity, and it starts with what your team is using. And because we can send that directly, immediately back to the office, because our platforms it's such an ease of use from mobile to desktop, and it's all web-based. It makes that, like, the second that technician clocks out, second they hit save on something, that's available back at the office for our admin team to do whatever they need to with. It helps with customer communicating. It helps with internal communication. It just makes it easier. So being able, and then the next phase or the next piece of that is super important is our setup. We take that part of JobSite so serious because every restoration company is different. We spend a lot of time with you and your team getting to know your business, making sure that we're setting your JobSite file up in a way that accommodates you and your team, making suggestions. We become very for lack of better words, intimate with our restoration companies that onboard with JobSite, because we want them to be successful. We are here for their success.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, because a majority of you guys have probably sat in that seat where you needed somebody to help drive that success. It's very important to you. And it's very close and near and dear, right? And I also think you act like an extension of their team at that point. It's not just, hey, we're here to help you. Okay, bye, see you later after you're done, right? You guys are very involved. So I think it's very interesting, to see how that all works. And I think for you guys, allowing your team to go out into the field also provides a unique perspective, right? Things are rapidly changing and evolving. And once you think you've seen it all, time always catches up and is like, yeah, gotcha. We definitely have changed some things, right? And so I think it's just very interesting and very unique for your team to have that opportunity. And maybe they see something that that team doesn't necessarily see. And so you guys can go back and say, hey, we kind of noticed this. I think this might help you. So I think it's always an evolution with the business as well. It's not just, hey, we're going to help you here and this is going to work forever. Because I think that's the other thing is in this industry, and you've probably seen it too for your decade plus of experience, a lot of times we think, oh, we figured it out and we don't evolve. And it's like, oh no, we have to evolve, right? We have to get with the times, we have to catch up. And sometimes we have to work to try and exceed what's going to happen, or else we fall behind. And I think we've kind of fallen behind with some of the technology stuff. And so when we're able to implement stuff like JobSite, it gives us the upper hand, especially when we're trying to adopt new things or, AI and all these things, right? If we can just adapt to technology, whatever else comes next, I think we're going to be a-okay, right? At that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we hope we'll be okay, right? We're doing
Yeah.
everything we possibly can.
Exactly. And I would definitely say, like you have, we've met in person, we've talked a couple of times, but I know there's something that you particularly say, and you talk about partners and profitability when it comes to your team, right? So what does that look like for maybe not just your business, but businesses as a whole in this space? And how does it impact your culture and your accountability within your guys' company?
Huge impact. I mean, if your team doesn't feel like they are partnered with you to be successful, then it's not going to work. It decreases that commitment, it decreases that accountability. And if a team member doesn't feel empowered or feel important or like they have the power to make an impact, huge culture thing. So our culture here is, well, I think it's awesome. Our culture here in JobSite's amazing. We probably have way too much fun sometimes, but it's funny because when we have our meetings, we kind of adopted that Tuesday meeting from how we did with Jerry's restoration business. We've adopted that theory and started there from the get-go. We started that, and it's fun to see our table grow every Tuesday, and it's fun to see people's faces, like that culture sticker shock when they see what we deliver and what we share as a team. Kind of the same culture shock that I had when walking into this. But it just makes everybody feel like they're a part of it. And when we can bounce things off each other, no one department, I hate the silo theory. I don't like that. I want every single partner or a department area to be involved with each other. We have to bridge those gaps with the speed of technology and the speed of the industry. If we don't bridge those gaps, it's like that telephone game. Like when you
Oh yeah,
try to
playing
pass
telephone. Yeah.
information. Yeah. And so if we're all in that one phone call at the same time, then we're not having to pass that information from team to team to team to team. And so if you can create that network or create that internal culture to initiate that dialogue, to make people feel like they can speak up. It's amazing how, like, I would never want to put a system or a process in place for my customer success department. I want my customer success department to put that process in place. I want them to be the ones that are like, because they're in it every day, right?
Yeah.
And so making my team feel like they have, like they're empowered to make these decisions, that's huge. And you're going to get the best outcome. So that theory applies to not only our tech space, but also our restoration space. And so it's been interesting to kind of utilize those ways of doing things back when I was in a restoration company. We're kind of copying and pasting that in tech, which is weird because it's like, wait, we're two completely different industries, but it works. And I think it's such a core piece of business. And if you have a team, it's such a core piece of that. And if you lose that, then you got to get it back because it's so important.
Yeah, and I would definitely say to your point about like not having silos, it also allows you to promote within. I would definitely say it gives you some great signs of who may actually thrive in maybe a different department because they have a different skill set or maybe they have a different type of mindset of thinking, which can also help you build your business faster, stronger, but you're also promoting within. So it also gives your staff even more buy-in because they realize that they have the opportunity to stay there, but also move up and make a career for themselves. Because I think sometimes, especially now, I would say our post-COVID life, we've seen a lot of people leave companies because they just don't have that opportunity or they don't think they have that opportunity,
Exactly.
even if it does exist for them. And I think that people are likely to leave jobs probably more often than they used to, 20, 30 years ago. We don't really hear people staying at a company for their entire career, right? Like when I see some people and it's like they've been at the same company for 30, 40 years, I'm like, wow, am I going to see that in my lifetime where somebody does that? Because right now it just doesn't, this industry and all the industries that we see day to day just don't have that right now, right? Because people are able to go get a bigger raise or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's benefits or retirement. So I think what you're talking about provides your staff with clarity, but also a sense of security and drive so that they're able to maybe sit in your seat one day, right? At some time, you're going to have to probably call it quits, retire. I'm sure there's things you want to
Wait,
do in your
what?
life. And so I think that, I'll never forget one time during a job process, I was interviewed by somebody that was the leader at this location. He said, I have you here because I think you can sit in my seat, right? And those are the type of things that leaders in the business think about. Obviously, if you're interviewing somebody or they're sitting in that seat across from you, it's because you see their potential. And so involving them just gives them that much more clarity on where the business stands and what they want to see happen for their staff. So I think all of this that we're talking about provides so many layers to how transparency and just sharing, but also allowing buy-in can help with the health of your business, right? That's huge. There's some underlying things here. It's not just about tech. It's not just about culture or transparency. It's actually about the health of your business as well, right? Because all of these
Yeah.
pieces play into the health of your business. And so one thing I think that's a constant topic is culture. Culture is what you hear all the time because we have some generations that are coming in and it's all about culture. It's not necessarily about the money or working from home or whatever. It's about the culture. What does it feel like? We're with our staff and employees and our teammates more than we are with our family. And so what do I feel when I come into work every day, right? How do I feel like I'm treated, or how do I see leadership looking at me? And how do you look at your peers, right? That's culture. So sometimes it's really hard to build that. Does not happen overnight. To your point, a lot of the stuff we do does not happen overnight. But how do you guys maintain a culture of trust and ownership and collaboration while you guys are growing, right? Because you guys are growing pretty quickly. There's a couple of
Yeah.
people that I've met. Bree is one of them, and like her position change, and it's just like it's so exciting. But how do you guys do that? How are you guys able to keep up with it, even though you guys are like rapidly expanding?
Oh man, we have so much fun. Just aside from like the culture aspect itself, we have a lot of fun. And that fun contributes to culture. I mean, there's been days that we'll be doing cartwheels down our office just for fun. I'm like, come on, get moving. We need some energy drummed up here. So it's like cartwheel time. No, we have a lot of fun, but I think everybody feeling like they're all part of a common goal. We set goals together. Our team, my team, I make it a point that they feel empowered. And so it's like you said, our team is growing very quickly, so quickly. And culture is so important. So I'm very picky choosy, I should say, about people we bring into our team, because you have to be careful. Like, you have to be careful that you have to make sure that people that you're bringing into your team, that they're going to have that same buy-in. So are they comfortable with being, ingrained and being together as one team? Or do they have the culture in them that they just want to sit at their desk and they don't want to talk, they want to sit there in a silo? That is an important thing to know when bringing on team members. So I almost prefer I would rather have somebody that's a good culture fit and then train or work them into where they need to be, because I can help make them successful. If I get somebody that is already successful and already has the skill, but they're not a good culture fit, I don't feel like they'll thrive. They won't thrive in our environment. But if I have somebody that is a culture fit and I feel like I know I can make them successful, that's my team member. Like, that's every single team member that we have brought on. And so that's really how we have kind of grown and how we plan to grow. I'll never lose that, I hope. I always want to make sure that my team feels empowered. I'm going to have to ask them in our meeting tomorrow, like, hey, am I empowering you all? Are you guys feeling like you have means to become successful and grow? We are, still quote unquote startup phase. And so it is fun. We are rapidly growing and positions constantly changing, constantly adding team members. And so it's a tricky thing to keep and maintain. But as long as you start bringing people into your team that fit that culture and you are motivated to help them become successful, it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, I mean, to your point, even though you're scaling, you're still taking the time to ask, like, hey, how do you guys feel? Are we still doing a good job? Because at the end of the day, you also need check-ins. It's not just checking in with your staff. You also need, a pulse check, if you will, to make sure
Mhm.
that you guys are leading at the best capacity possible. And when you're in that startup phase or growing phase, things can happen really quickly. And so taking accountability and initiative to make sure that you guys are still thriving and providing the environment that you guys want to provide is really crucial. And I think you said something really great. Sometimes, there might be the person that has all of the skills, right? But it only really takes one person to really affect your team, good or bad, right? And so if that means that you maybe have to bring in somebody who doesn't have the skill set but fits the culture, there's nothing wrong with that. Truly, it's okay to have
Mhm.
to take the time to maybe train them or provide the resources that they need in order to thrive and succeed, right? That also, one, starts the buy-in process that shows that you
Totally.
really truly care. And I think just as much as we're judging on first impression, they are as well, right? So I think
Yep.
that it works both ways. And if you expect something, just know that the person you're looking at to put in your company is expecting something in return as well. That's the process of life, right?
Yep.
It's a give and take. You don't just take, and they don't just give. So I think it's also really important for people to understand that no matter where you are in the business, you always have to have pulse checks. You always have to make sure that, hey, am I doing what I said I was going to do? Because that also is, again, plays into your success. And honestly, I think you guys are doing a really great job. And everybody is always so happy and helpful, and ideas are always flowing. And I think that's what we really need in this industry, to be quite honest. Before we let everybody go, do you have any final thoughts?
Oh man, well, gosh, so many. Where do I want to start? Do we want to go another hour? Just kidding. No, it's kind of cool to see this, to view this from an internal job side with that hat on and those glasses on, but then also how I guess I appreciate you even kind of tying those two worlds together. I mean, I guess I didn't really realize how much of we took from the restoration industry in that business and kind of copied it over into this tech business. So it just goes to show that there's so much core involved in a business, and it can be as complicated or as simple as you make it. And as long as you just start with those core things and grow from there and keep everybody in your team successful, you'll be successful. And so that was my probably the final words. I would say thank you so much for providing that little bit of sight or view from your perspective of the industry in restoration over to tech. Because I guess I never really thought about it that way, but that's really cool.
Oh, you're so welcome. I think that's what this is all about, right? We learn so much from one another, and maybe it will provide you with a different perspective. And maybe there's something that you guys end up implementing because it does translate well into
Mhm.
the tech space and vice versa. Because I think a lot of times we draw these lines and separate things, but we really don't have to, right?
Right.
That's the beauty of life and the way the world works, right? You can also really meld things together and it can translate beautifully. And then we can have those moments where like, maybe that didn't work. Okay, we won't do that again, right? But that's the whole process of the new and implementing things that are maybe newer to our industry. And I think, for you, you have a different like mindset, frame of mind because you've been in it. And so now you'll probably see things a little bit differently. But I also feel that, we learn from everybody that we talk to, and understanding, maybe if it doesn't work now, it can work later, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe I didn't think about it that way. And so we're able to really take from one another. And I really think that's why our industry does thrive. No matter what situations we're put in, pandemic, post pandemic, the natural disasters we see, I think that we're still very resilient and able to thrive because we have these relationships and we're able to provide new perspectives and advice and things like that. But I really like to thank you for your time today, and I can't wait to have you on again. And for everybody
Yes.
watching, thank you for tuning in on this episode of Ask the Expert, and we will see you next time. Take
Thanks
care.
so much, Kayla.